Verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk to them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates.
There's an article in the Wall Street Journal that was published on Valentine's Day in 2013, the day of love, of course. And it tried to explain that real love doesn't come from God. Instead, love is just a bunch of chemical reactions in your brain. So according to the article, this is what it says. Valentine's Day is here, so get ready to send and receive heart-shaped chocolates and cards decorated with big red hearts. But wait a minute, not so fast. Neuroscience has discovered that the heart has very little to do with romance. For accuracy, you should send your main squeeze a Valentine's Day card with the image of a squishy gray blob evocative of a rotting cauliflower. Your brain. Because that's where romance really resides. And instead of saying, I love you, the knowledgeable lover would say, darling, dopamine floods my caudate nucleus every time I look at you. Why don't you turn to your significant other right now and say that to them? Darling, dopamine floods my caudate nucleus every time I look at you. That's so romantic. I mean, whoa. Love and attraction are all tangled in the convoluted wiring of the brain, so says the article. So what is love? Neuroscience tells us that love is a condition involving neurons, neurotransmitters, hormones, receptors, and circuits in your brain. Cognitive science defines passionate love as an elevated activity in the brain pathways which cause feelings of euphoria, strong motivation, and heightened energy, which can induce sleeplessness, loss of appetite, and obsessive thinking about the beloved. Is just neurons. Or is it? Obviously, Tina Turner doesn't think it's just neurons, or maybe she does think it's just neurons. She says, what's love got to do with it anyway? It's just a secondhand emotion. It doesn't matter that much, right? Was she on to something? So, in the face of all that dumbing down of love, which is what the neuroscience thing does, it just dumbs it down to a bunch of chemical processes. In the face of all that dumbing down of love, we get this command from God, right? Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. What do we do with that? I want us to look at three things about this passage this morning. Number one is the command to love God. Number two is the meaning of love. And number three is why should I care? So the command to love God, the meaning of love, and then why should I care? So the command to love God, what we have here basically in the book of Deuteronomy is a sermon by Moses. They are camped on the edge of the promised land. They are about to go into the promised land. Moses isn't allowed to go with them because he had disobeyed God. He's about to make his trek on up Mount Nebo where he is going to die. And God will show him the promised land. We were up on Mount Nebo, and it's amazing what you can see from Mount Nebo. It's in Jordan today. But you see below you the Dead Sea, and then you see the Jordan Valley that goes all the way up. I don't think you can quite see the Sea of Galilee. I don't remember if we could see it or not, but you could tell it was way up there. You can see the Judean wilderness, and you can look on beyond. You can see on into Jerusalem. You can't see Jerusalem, but it's way back in there. You really can almost see the entire land of Israel from on top of Mount Nebo. Pretty cool experience to see that. But that has nothing to do with our sermon today. I just thought I'd throw that in there because I travel and I'm cool. So they're about to go in and conquer. And Moses is giving a sermon. His last sermon. And he knows that their number one weakness is that they will lose heart, or they will lose their fervor for God. They will lose their love for God. And so he talks about it over and over and over and over again in the book of Deuteronomy. In fact, it's one of the main themes of the book of Deuteronomy. Love the Lord. Don't forget to love the Lord. Know the Lord. Love the Lord. This is his over and over and over again comment. Of course, this passage, chapter 6, follows chapter 5, where he gave he repeated the law, the 10 Commandments again. You have them in Exodus 20, and now he repeats them again in the 5th chapter. He didn't have chapters, they were added later, but it was part of his sermon. So he has just talked about the 10 Commandments. And then he talks about love. Well, what's the relationship between these two things? What is it about the commands of God? Well, they're actually not harsh statements. They're actually instructions on how to love well. That's what the 10 Commandments are. They are instructions on how to love well. The first 4 tell us how to love God well. The last 6 tell us how to love our neighbor well, but they're really interrelated. Love of God and love of neighbor are the two sides of the same coin. If you love God, you will love those around you. These are incredibly related. The commands, they're not harsh statements. They're instructive of how to love well. So it's in this context that we get this command to love. To love. So there are 3 things he asks us to do right here. And I'm just going to go through the passage very quickly in this first point, just to get all the things that are in here. He asks us to love the Lord exclusively, to love him with everything we are, and to remind ourselves to do it constantly. So here are the 3. The first one, love the Lord exclusively. Verse 4, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Well, what's the point of his saying that he is one? Well, the point is that there's no other God. He's the only God. Hear, O Lord our God, the Lord is one. He's the only one. He's the only one that exists. Yes, there are 3 persons in the Godhead, but it's one God. The Westminster Shorter Catechism puts it this way. There are 3 persons in the Godhead, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and these 3 are one God, the same in substance, equal in power and glory. One God, 3 persons. There is no other God. Any of the other gods that they might have pursued, which they did frequently, and we've seen that. At Sinai, they worshiped a golden calf. And then we saw last week the Baal of Peor. They started worshiping at the idol, or at the altar of the Baal of Peor. But these gods are not really gods, figments of their imagination. But it was so dangerous because in pursuing those gods, they were denying God himself and giving their allegiance to a non-God. Well, we do this all the time. We pursue things that think will save us or make us happy or make us feel good about ourselves and about others. But no amount of money, no amount of good looks, no amount of popularity or intelligence or status or anything else can give us what we need to be happy and fulfilled. Only God, because he is the only one. He is one. That's the first thing. The second one is the verse I just read, verse 5. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. It's interesting that when Jesus quoted this passage, he added mind as well. He added a fourth category, but really mind is implied in these, and I'm not going to get into all of that. So we're to love God with everything that we are, what we think about, what we meditate upon, what we do is always informed by what we love. See, that's the most basic affection. What we love controls everything we do. That's why he's saying, love the Lord your God, because what you do after that will be pretty good. Augustine said, love God and do as you please. Well, he wasn't saying do as you please. It's all in context of loving God. If you love God, what you do is going to be good. And so Moses is telling them that God needs to take first priority. And that's what he's telling us as well. Where do you spend your money? What are you passionate about? What keeps you awake at night? What do you dream about? These are the things that are important to you. But if it's not God, it'll end in disaster. That's why he commands this. My guess is that we need to spend a whole lot more time thinking and pursuing God than we do if he is our ultimate love. And then third, we are to do these things constantly. This is verse 6. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. So many times in the Old Testament, instructions are given to teach your children about God. It says here to teach them diligently. How? By talking with them when you're at home, when you're out and about, in the evening when it's bedtime, in the morning when you get up. In other words, you're to teach your children about God all the time. They need reminders, continual reminders. But then it says in verse 8, you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. This is talking about the commandments, which are ways to love. Now, I don't want to get into all three of these little things that it's talking about, but the idea here is, the point is that the commands of God are so important that we need constant reminders to love well, constant reminders that this is the way that is worth living. That's the commands of God. But number two, what does it mean? The meaning of love. And this is the real sticking point. Because as a society, we can't even agree on what love is. We can't agree on it. Tina Turner's version is to minimize love. What's love got to do with it? It's a great song, by the way. Just don't agree with her theology. What's love got to do? Anyway, sorry, got me carried away there a little bit. I listened to it this week. It's just a secondhand emotion. Is it really just a secondhand emotion? I think that we could arguably say that the ideas about love have changed since Tina Turner put that song out. The new version is, yes, it's an emotion, but it's not a secondhand emotion anymore. It's now front and center. That is, emotions are front and center. What you feel is front and center. How you feel is everything. In his book, Love, A History, Yale scholar Simon May calls human love our new God. And in the chapter on Love Plays God, this is what he writes. Human love is now tasked with achieving what only divine love was thought capable of, to be our ultimate source of meaning and happiness. We have changed the Bible's statement, God is love, to love is God. Here are some of the core beliefs for this new religion of love. Human love is the universal form of salvation available to all of us. We don't need long and disciple training to learn how to love because most of us can love spontaneously and without effort. Human love is always benevolent and harmonious, a haven of peace. Human love transports us beyond the messy imperfections of the everyday world into a superior state of purity and perfection. Human love delivers us from all of life's losses and sufferings. And then he writes this: these sorts of ideas saturate popular culture. To its immense cost, human love has usurped a role that only God's love used to play. This is what people are pushing for. I can love what I want, whoever I want, because this is the highest level of achieving anything. If I love, then that's it. Everything will be harmonious. Until it's not. It's like bowing down before the golden calf or some other idol. And since it's based on how you feel, it's hardly unconditional love. Because your feelings change all the time. I think you know that this is true. We change. We're up, we're down, we're over, we're on here and we're there. We are all over the place emotionally. So it can't be based on anything unconditional, and it's wreaking havoc everywhere. There are broken relationships everywhere. People are not doing well. See, what's going on in Western culture at large is something like this: I will love you as long as I feel something. In the words of the great B.B. King song, which I also listened to this week, and I'll spare you, the thrill is gone. The thrill is gone. It's gone away. And you know you done me wrong, baby. And you'll be sorry someday. You know I'm free, baby. I'm free from your spell. And now that it's over, all I can do is wish you well. The thrill is gone. The thrill is gone. Sorry, couldn't resist. And then he plays the sweetest little licks of blues guitar that you ever heard in your life. Too bad he's gone. Huh? No pun there. So there's two kinds of love. We've actually talked about this before, but I'm bringing it up again. There's two kinds of love. There's transactional love and there's covenantal love. Transactional love and covenantal love. In the transactional kind of love, it's I will love as long as it's convenient for me. In other words, I'm the center of that kind of love. I'm doing it when and how I please. It's if it's convenient for me. If it doesn't work out for me, I'm gone. But covenantal love is very different. I will love whether I get anything out of it or not. I will love anyway. I will decide to love. I will choose to love. So it used to be in our society that marriage relationships were covenantal. But that has completely changed. And Ann and I were talking and discussing this concept, and she came up with 10 different examples of how I could talk about it, but I don't have all day here, so I had to leave a lot of those out. But I thought about the most marriages or relationships today. People now, they live together to try out the relationship first. But of course, it's a transactional relationship because what they're saying by living together is, I'm not committed enough to you to make a commitment. You're not that important to me. I just want what you can give me, but if I lose the feeling, then it's over. This is all transactional language. I get from you, and I will keep coming back as long as I'm getting something from it. But there's a covenantal type of relationship that's actually widely accepted in our society. And it feels like it's the only one left, the only covenantal relationship that's left, and it's a relationship between parents and children. Most people out there think you need to be invested in your children. Well, think about it. When a baby is born, they offer nothing but work. Well, they're cute and everything, but they offer nothing. They're helpless. You have to feed them, bathe them, change them, rock them, walk them, talk to them. You got to be invested in their lives. What do they do for you? Nothing. I remember thinking in the middle of the night when I was walking one of our kids, and I was just thinking about how much I wanted to go back to bed. And would this child stop crying? Yeah, it's hard, but you're willing to make the sacrifice because you love them. Because you love them. They're not going to give you anything, especially when they're babies. You love them. What is actually in it for you? Lack of sleep, spend a lot of money, no free time, less energy, running around behind kids so they won't hurt themselves. I mean, what's in it for you? A lot of people don't want to sign up for that. Some people are saying, I'm not going to do that. We're not going to have kids because I don't feel like doing that. So it feels like it's pushing that way, having less and less kids. But for those who do all those things, you do it willingly. And more than that, you do it gladly because you love them. See, that's covenantal love. That's, I'm going to give to you, I'm committed to you, no matter what. No matter how hard this thing gets, I'm with you. And brothers and sisters, that's the kind of love that God is asking from us. To love Him and to give ourselves entirely to Him, no matter what is in it for us. Why would we do that? Is He some kind of a narcissist? Well, no. Many of you may remember that I was involved in a group called Overeaters Anonymous, which clearly I don't need anymore. This is funny stuff, guys. You know, a little giggling would be good. I needed some talking back here to me because it's like I'm up here just beating against the wall. In fact, they follow the Alcoholics Anonymous book, the 12-step program. In fact, all the anonymous things do it, follow the 12-step program. And for quite a while, I was truly puzzled by its effectiveness. But it was very clear that it was very effective. But people were talking about a higher power, and it was all this new agey, and I just felt uncomfortable with it, and I didn't know what to do with all of it. And yet I hung in there for a while, and then it dawned on me, even though whatever higher power they're talking about has nothing to do with the God of the Bible, it dawned on me that there's this thing called common grace, where it rains on the just and the unjust alike. There's this common grace, and God set up the world to work in a certain way. And it works this way, and when people follow it, usually their lives go better. I mean, if you are honest in your business dealings, usually it's going to go better than if you're cheating in your business dealings. Somehow, it's going to come crashing down at some point. God's ways usually are better in the world. Well, this whole thing of the 12-step program, the essence of the 12-step program is to stop thinking about yourself and stop relying on yourself. It is to rely on something other than you, to be outside of yourself. But it's way more than that. You need to go and repair all the relationships that you broke because of your self-centeredness. Because the whole point of it is addictions are things that you do to cope with all this brokenness and self-centeredness. This is the basic fundamental postulation or fundamental idea in these 12-step programs. So you have to go out and you apologize to people. And I wrote a lot of letters to a lot of people and talked to a lot of people about that. And let me tell you, it's painful. Most people don't want to do it because you've got to face all kinds of junk in yourself where you caused damage because it was about you. But the effect of it is all kinds of power over addiction. I remember the first time that I forgot to eat lunch. That is unbelievable. I have never missed a meal. I mean, I forgot how to eat. I forgot to eat lunch. What's that about? Who are you and what have you done with Mark? See, this is what love is. It's to quit obsessing about ourselves. Now, some of us need to deal with things because we obsess over ourselves. Some of us have been abused. Some of us have had things happen and we can't get past them. And we do need to deal with those things. I'm not skipping those things, but in its essence, love is to quit obsessing over ourselves, over how we look, over how we compare with others, over how we measure up. See, we're so obsessed with how others think of us or what they think about us or how we come across to others. And I think that if an organization like Alcoholics Anonymous or Overeaters Anonymous can see such power over addiction, how much more when we get outside of ourselves and put all of our affections on God? How much more then is He able to heal us and give us unparalleled joy? It's the path. It's what He longs to do. He longs to heal us. But then there's this kicker. If the only reason I love God is so that He will give me unparalleled joy, well, now I'm using God. I'm using Him to get what I want. You see how tricky this is? But if I can get outside of C.S. Lewis said humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Taking our eyes off of ourselves and having to be the center of attention. Well, this is hard. This is hard. It's tricky. It's even impossible. It's even impossible. So why should I care? Why should I try? I can't, no matter how much I try, I feel like I can't get my eyes off of myself. So why should I care? That's the third point, by the way. What would compel us to lay aside everything around us that so powerfully draws us in? That promises to give us so much? What would compel us to give our money and our time to God? What would compel us to lay down our lives for the sake of the kingdom? What would compel missionaries to go to dangerous places and do dangerous things? What would compel us to forget about ourselves, to forget about the benefits that we get and risk everything just because we love Him? And here's the answer. It's because He loved us first. You're probably not there yet, but chapter 33 of Deuteronomy is this very interesting chapter. It's a song that Moses speaks the words of. And it's essentially a song. This is the end, right? This is the end of Deuteronomy. He's about to go up on the mountain, and you would think this is his final encouragement. He's going to do a touchy-feely now. And he's going to get them all excited about themselves and ready to go in and take the promised land. That's not what happens in chapter 33. In chapter 33, basically, he tells them how much they have failed God. It's almost a pessimistic view of Moses. He's just told them over and over again to choose life, to choose love. But in the song, he's painting this realistic picture about how they're going to fail God over and over again, which is exactly what happened. In the history of Israel, they fail him over and over and over again. It's almost morbid and discouraging. We don't like this kind of stuff. But see, here's the point. This is the whole reason these things are in the Bible. And why is that? It's because at our lowest point, grace does its best work. It's at our very lowest point that grace does its best work. Why would we love God? Because He is infinitely lovely. He is the definition of love. He is beauty personified. If we see Him, we can't help but love Him. If we see His beauty, we can't help but be drawn in. It's just that we don't want to see it very much. We want to do what we want to do. How do I know that He's beauty personified? The mother of a 9-year-old boy named Mark received a phone call in the middle of the afternoon, and it was the teacher from her son's school. Mrs. Smith, something unusual happened today in your son's 3rd grade class. Your son did something that so surprised me that I thought you should know about it immediately. And the mother started to get worried. The teacher went on, "Nothing like this has happened in all my years of teaching. This morning, I was teaching a lesson on creative writing, and as I always do, I tell the story of the ant and the grasshopper. The ant works hard all summer and stores up plenty of food, but the grasshopper plays all summer and does no work. Then winter comes. The grasshopper begins to starve because he has no food. So he begins to beg, 'Please, Mr. Ant, you have much food. Please let me eat too.' And then I said, 'Boys and girls, your job is to write the ending of the story.' And she said, 'Your son Mark raised his hand. Teacher, may I draw a picture?' And she said, 'Yes, Mark, if you like, you may draw a picture, but first you have to write the ending of the story.' As in all the years past, most of the students said the ant shared his food through the winter, and both the ant and the grasshopper lived." That's where most kids put it. A few children wrote, "No, Mr. Grasshopper, you should have worked in the summer. Now I have just enough food for myself." So the ant lived and the grasshopper died. But your son ended the story in a way different from any other child ever. He wrote, "So the ant gave all his food to the grasshopper, and the grasshopper lived through the winter, but the ant died." And the picture at the bottom of the page, Mark had drawn 3 crosses. There's nothing more beautiful than that Jesus would lay his life down for wanderers, for stiff-necked people. That he would lay his life down for us so we could call God Abba, Father. There's no other religion that teaches how God himself loved his people so much that he would die for them. Why wouldn't we love him and give him our everything? What's love got to do with it? Everything. Everything. And that's the gospel. And it changes everything. Let's pray.